This episode of the Literary Minute is dedicated to the memory of Ethel Hedgeman Lyle, founder of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. It is also in loving memory of the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his lovely wife, Coretta Scott King. Hi, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Literary or the Lit Minute with me, Professor Stephanie Johnson, also known as the Write, W-R-I-T-E, Professor. We are kicking off Season 2 with a power-packed month. First of all, on January 7th, 1891, one of the major contributors to African American literature was born in the person of Zora Neale Hurston. This episode of the Literary Minute is entitled First Light, Where Do We Go From Here? For two major reasons. The first reason is to pay homage to Ethel Hedgeman Lyle, who was the major contributor for the vision that came to the establishing of the first Greek letter organization for African American college women, known as Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, founded on the campus of Howard University on January 15th, 1908. And the subtitle, Where Do We Go From Here, recognizes the last publication of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was born on January 15th, 1929. Let's jump into this because it's lit. It was recorded on April 4th, 1968, that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. On April 3rd, the night before his assassination, he delivered his famous sermon entitled, I've Been to the Mountaintop. And of course, after his assassination, that sermon rang through with so many ominous vibes and so much foreshadowing. And he recognized the fact that his time may have been up, possibly because of the threats that he received, against his life, because of the moves that he was making in society. He was prolific in the civil rights movement, garnering different civil rights for Americans who were being disenfranchised on so many different levels. In addition to that, with his final publication that he had recently finished at the time, entitled Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, his focus became more on economic emancipation for all people, and of course, especially those who were poverty-stricken, which at the time were mostly people of color and women. He talked about the materialism or the capitalism in this country that leads to poverty. He was writing against and speaking out about, at that time, the militarism that was taking place, more control of the citizens of the country by the military and by the police. He was continuing to speak out against the racism and the xenophobia that was taking place during that time. So his premise in that work, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, was shedding light on three major factors or areas of contention in the country: xenophobia or racism, materialism and poverty, as well as the militarism. All three, he said, we can conquer with love. Simply love. What I personally took away from my reading of Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community is this, and it was an excellent strategy employed by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He basically called America to the carpet. He assessed America's integrity, comparing the words that were put on paper in the United States Constitution, comparing it and contrasting it with what was being played out or practiced in society. And of course, the two were not congruent. They were not parallel. He called that out. He basically said that the government and the establishment needs to keep its word to the people because it had not done so. There have been certain inalienable rights that were given to United States citizens, and not all citizens of the United States were being granted those inalienable rights. Now, this new platform, the Poor People's Campaign, was very significant for several reasons. It was an attempt to kind of bridge the gaps and find a common ground between groups during that time who protested by fighting back, by physically defending themselves, even with force, and those who chose the nonviolent route. They were trying to find a common ground. Now, for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Poor People's Campaign was an extension of his prior platforms for social freedom by teaching the life and gospel of Jesus Christ, and also against social injustice by drawing from major theologians and philosophers who preceded him, like Mahatma Gandhi. So with his focus now towards economic emancipation, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. offered us this. The curse of poverty has no justification in our age. It is socially as cruel and blind as the practice of cannibalism at the dawn of civilization, when men ate each other because they had not yet learned to take food from the soil or to consume the abundant animal life around them. The time has come for us to civilize ourselves by the total, direct, and immediate abolition of poverty. April 4th, 2018 will mark 50 years since the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. During his birthday celebration, the official celebration held at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta this year, Reverend Dr. King's daughter, Reverend Bernice King, mentioned this, that she would like our country, individuals who are willing to perform 50 acts of kindness for someone of a different ethnicity between January 15th and April 4th. Simply perform 50 acts of kindness for someone of a different ethnic or racial background. For more information about this campaign and others that might be held by the King Center in Atlanta, visit mlk50forward.org. That's MLK, the number 50, forward, FORWARD.org. And you should also see it below. This has been episode 1 of season 2 of the Lit or Literary Minutes with me, Professor Stephanie Johnson, also known as the Right, WRITE Professor. This episode was entitled First Light. Where do we go from here? The answer, don't go backwards. Keep moving forward, and remember, reading is lit, so be lit. Hi there. Are you enjoying my videos? Do you find them engaging, enriching, and mildly entertaining? If so, share me. Don't keep me all to yourself. I'd love to be able to share this knowledge with not only you, but with your family and your friends. So come along with me and invite others to join us as we stay lit together. Like, share my videos, and subscribe to my YouTube page. I'll be seeing you.